You ever read a status or a tweet maybe that was hard to read because of abbreviations and punctuation or, different acronyms that were used? Well, that's starting to transition into the business world. You might get an email or a text or informative message that is difficult to read or hard to understand what point they're trying to make because of these small grammar issues. If we could fix these issues, then communication would go a lot smoother and everyone would be on the same pace. Communication is the #1 aspect in a business career because communication is so important in making sales and discussing different things with different potential business partners. If you have bad grammar, or if you're bad at grammar, or if you can't speak well, this is seen as a major downfall because communication is so important. Most jobs these days require you to be well with written and verbal communication both, because a lot of business, like international, is dealt with through email or through text message or through Skype, and you have to be able to speak to a wide variety of people. My name is Lindsey May, and today we're discussing comma splices and run-on sentences. I'll be making 3 main points. My first point will be run-on sentences and how to fix them. The second is comma splices and when a comma splice happens and when it's appropriate to use commas. And then third will be how to fix these errors. My first point is run-on sentence. And a run-on sentence, believe it or not, is not a really long sentence. I bet $1 million that half of y'all watching this video think that run-on sentences are just a sentence full of words and words and words and words that kind of look like the number pi, 3.4 number, but it's really not. A run-on sentence could be 5 words in one sentence. It just depends on what the sentences are. A lack of punctuation between 2 independent clauses is what causes a run-on sentence. An independent clause is a sentence or group of words that has a subject and a verb. By adding commas and using commas, it also helps the reader know when to pause, or maybe even whenever there's a group of list coming up that you need to look out for. Comma splices. Comma splices are when a comma is either used inappropriately or not used when it needs to be used. A comma is not strong enough to fuse together 2 independent clauses. So if you have this independent clause and this independent clause, you can't put a comma in the middle of both of them and have a complete sentence. That will be a comma splice. Okay, I have a couple examples on how we can fix these. My first example, I have this sentence. I am hungry, I need food. You can see that there is no punctuation in this sentence, and why? Or it is because of that reason it is a run-on sentence, because run-on sentences lack punctuation. Correct? Correct. Okay. There are 1 of 4 ways to fix a run-on sentence. Like I said earlier, if you only add a comma, then that won't fix the problem. It'll just give it a new name, which is the comma splice. Okay. The first of the 4 methods that we could use to fix this is by simply adding a period. I am hungry, period. I need food, period. That's probably the simplest way you'll ever want to. And also, you want to make sure that you put the period at the end of a complete sentence or a complete clause. And you can kind of practice this because you go from period to period. So if you go at the end of this period to the beginning to where that period is, I need food is a sentence. If you go from this period to the period before that, I am hungry. They're both sentences, so you know that's right. The second one would be using a semicolon. I am hungry, semicolon, I need food, period. That's one whole complete sentence and is grammatically correct. The reason that people don't really use semicolons is because it gets kind of tricky, because semicolons can only be used if both of the clauses are related to each other. So if the sentence said, I am hungry, I get off at 10 o'clock, you couldn't use a semicolon because those aren't related to each other. But because it is talking about hungry and eating food, they are related to each other, related to each other, which means you can use your semicolon. The next one is our subordinated conjunction. This means that we are using a word, just one word, that makes either the first or the second sentence a dependent clause. Dependent meaning it is not a independent sentence or independent clause. It needs something else to make it a complete sentence. So the word that we use is because. I am hungry because I need food. Since we put because in front of I need food, that made it a dependent clause, which allows us to make it a whole sentence. Okay. And the last one is a coordinated conjunction. I am hungry, comma, and I need food. This is the most common one that we use for anything, simple everyday sentences. And one really easy thing to remember for your coordinated conjunction is, of course, your comma, but you need a word afterwards. And the words that you can remember is by using an acronym called FANBOYS. 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 It starts for, and, nor, but, or, yet, or so. And if you use one of those words and behind your comma, then that is correctly using a coordinated conjunction, which turns a run-on sentence into a complete sentence. Okay, now we're going to move on how to fix the comma splices. Okay, this sentence right here. I watched soccer yesterday. It was boring. You could add this is a comma splice because there would be a comma right there, or there was a comma right there. You can hardly see it. But there's a comma right there, but there doesn't need to be a comma right there. It's a comma splice because the second part of the sentence is a dependent clause, and so it's not, or it's an independent clause, so just a comma cannot correctly support splicing those two together. Here we have another example of how to fix a comma splice. The original sentence had a comma right here. Black bears are beautiful, and then it had a comma. They have a shiny coat. But you can't use a comma because that would make a comma splice. So since the semicolon rule, since both of the clauses are relatable, we are able to use our semicolon, which makes it pretty and nice and neat and grammatically correct. These are really simple and really easy if you just take the time to reread your notes, or if you take the time to reread emails and stuff like that. There's really no reason to miss commas because if you reread, you'll see where you need to pause, or where you need to list something, and where you need to add those extra commas. So just make sure you reread your work and do it right the first time so you don't have to do it again.